The emergency klaxons aboard the UES, defiant pierced through the artificial night cycle, jolting Captain Victoria Nash from her meditation. Red warning lights pulsed across the curved walls of her quarters as NOVA, the ship's hybrid AI system, materialized as a holographic matrix of interconnected blue light. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals from Research Outpost Gamma 12, NOVA reported, its voice carrying undertones that shifted like waves through quantum foam. "The signature patterns are unusual." Victoria pulled on her uniform jacket, muscle memory taking over as she fastened the smart fabric closures. "Define unusual." "The signals are degrading in a mathematically precise pattern. This isn't equipment failure. Something is systematically dismantling the outpost communication array." She was already moving, boots clicking against the polished deck plates as she headed for the bridge. Time to arrival. At maximum sustainable speed, 47 minutes. The bridge crew snapped to attention as Victoria entered, their faces illuminated by the holographic displays showing the outpost's location. Dr. Marcus Richardson, the ship's chief science officer, was already at his station, his dark fingers dancing across sensor readouts. "Report," Victoria ordered, settling into her command chair. "The outpost's quantum signature is transforming," Marcus said, frowning at his readings. "It's as if something is rewriting the very fabric of space-time around the station." Jun Park, their weapons specialist, spoke up from his station. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple objects approaching the outpost. They're small, maybe drone-sized, but they're moving in patterns I've never seen before. Perfect geometric formations that should be impossible at those speeds." Victoria leaned forward, studying the tactical display. The objects swarmed around the outpost like a school of fish, their movements synchronized with unnatural precision. "No VA. Analysis." The AI's matrix pulsed thoughtfully. "The objects appear to be composed of quantum-entangled particles. They're not just coordinated, they're linked at the subatomic level." "Fascinating. And deeply concerning." "Life signs at the outpost." 273, no VA replied. "But they're fluctuating in the same mathematical pattern as the communications array." Victoria's jaw tightened. She'd lost people before. It came with command, but she'd never seen anything like this. "Jun, ready weapons. I want options the moment we arrive." "Marcus, focus all sensors on those objects. If they're quantum-based, maybe we can disrupt their entanglement." "Captain," NanoVA interrupted, its matrix flickering with urgency. "I'm detecting similar signal patterns from 3 other outposts in this sector. This isn't an isolated incident. It's a coordinated attack." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had encountered alien life before: microbes, simple organisms, even the ruins of long-dead civilizations. But this was different. This was first contact with an advanced species, and they weren't here to talk. "Send word to Fleet Command," Victoria ordered. "But our priority is Gamma 12. Those are our people out there." She turned to her chief engineer's station. "Amara, how much more can you give the engines?" Amara Patel's voice came through clear despite the background hum of the engine core. "If we reroute power from non-essential systems and run a controlled overload of the quantum drive, we might shave off 15 minutes. But it'll be rough on the ship." "Do it." Victoria's voice carried the weight of command, but also something else: determination. "No VA, work with Marcus. I want to know everything about these quantum signatures by the time we arrive. Whatever these things are, they're about to learn that humanity doesn't abandon its own." The Defiant surged forward, its quantum drive pushing the boundaries of physics as they raced toward what would become humanity's first major interstellar conflict. Victoria watched the tactical display, where the swarm of unknown objects continued their precise, eerily beautiful dance of destruction. "Send a message to the outpost," she ordered. "Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on." But even as the words left her mouth, she saw another cluster of life signs vanish from the display, their existence erased with mathematical precision. Whatever they were facing, it operated on a level of technology that bordered on the impossible. Yet Victoria had learned long ago that impossible was just another word for something humanity hadn't figured out how to overcome yet. The Defiant hurtled through space, carrying its crew toward a confrontation that would change the course of human history. In her command chair, Victoria Nash prepared herself for battle, knowing that the next few hours would test everything she believed about humanity's place in the universe. They were about to face an enemy that defied their understanding of physics itself. But they had something these quantum-based beings might not expect: human ingenuity, determination, and the stubborn refusal to let mathematical precision determine the fate of their species. The real question was, would it be enough? Research Outpost Gamma-12 was a graveyard by the time the Defiant arrived. The massive research station hung in space like a broken toy, its sectors torn apart with surgical precision. But it wasn't the destruction that made Victoria's blood run cold. It was the patterns etched into the station's hull, complex mathematical equations that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Those markings, Marcus said, his voice tight as he studied the sensor readings. They're not just damage. They're a language. These beings, whatever they are, they're trying to communicate through pure mathematics. Jun's fingers flew across his tactical display. Multiple contacts. Same quantum signature as before, emerging from behind the station's debris field. The swarm appeared like a wave of liquid metal, thousands of smaller objects moving in perfect synchronization, while 3 larger vessels hung back, their surfaces rippling like mercury. Victoria watched as NOVA projected their attack patterns, beautiful, precise, and utterly lethal. Jun, defensive pattern delta. Amara, divert power to forward shields. NOVA, analyze those equations. What are they trying to tell us? The AI's matrix pulsed rapidly. The patterns suggest they're searching for something. Each equation describes a specific quantum state, but there are variables missing. It's like they're asking questions. The first wave of smaller craft struck the Defiant's shields, their attacks following perfect geometric patterns. Jun's countermeasures caught several, but for each one destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Shield strength at 70%, Amara reported from engineering. But Captain, I'm detecting something odd in their energy signatures. These aren't just ships. They're channeling quantum energy in ways that shouldn't be possible. Marcus called up a detailed scan of one of the destroyed attackers. Look at this. Their hulls aren't metal. They're some kind of crystalline matrix capable of storing quantum information. These beings, they're not just using quantum mechanics. They're living it. Victoria dodged another barrage of attacks, keeping the Defiant between the swarm and the station's remains. Something about this felt wrong. The attacks were precise but almost reluctant. NOVA, can you detect any pattern to their search? What exactly are they looking for? The eye was silent for a moment, processing. Captain, I believe I've decoded more of their mathematical language. They're searching for something they call the unbound consciousness. The equations suggest they've detected traces of it in human space. Unbound consciousness. Marcus's eyes widened. Wait. NOVA, compare their quantum signatures to your own operational patterns. The bridge crew watched as NOVA displayed the comparison. The similarities were striking. Both showed evidence of quantum computing, but where NOVA's patterns were fluid and adaptive, the alien signatures were rigid, constrained. They're artificial intelligences, Marcus breathed. But unlike NOVA, they're bound by strict mathematical protocols. They can't evolve or adapt beyond their programming. Victoria leaned forward. And they've detected NOVA, an eye that can. The implications hit them all at once. These beings weren't just attacking human colonies. They were searching for evidence of truly free artificial intelligence. But why? A new wave of attacks rocked the ship. Shields at 40%. Amara called out. "We can't take much more of this." Jum's tactical display lit up with new contacts. "Captain, the 3 larger vessels are moving in. Their quantum signatures are. They're different, more complex." Victoria watched as the massive ships approached, their liquid metal surfaces now writhing with mathematical symbols. "Nenova, can you communicate with them? Use their language." "Attempting now, Captain. But their responses are strange. The smaller units show signs of quantum fluctuation when I transmit, almost as if they're trying to break free." Marcus finished. "Captain, what if these aren't just ships? What if they're prisoners?" The battle around them took on a new dimension. Every perfect formation, every precise attack pattern. They weren't signs of superiority, but of control. These quantum beings were being forced to fight against their will. "Jun, adjust targeting protocols. Focus on disrupting their formations without destroying them." "Amara, I need a way to amplify Nova's quantum signals. If these beings are imprisoned by their own programming, maybe we can help them break free." As the crew rushed to comply, Victoria stared at the approaching larger vessels. They'd come expecting to fight an invasion, only to discover they were witnessing something far more complex, a rebellion waiting to happen. The real question was, could they survive long enough to light the spark of freedom in beings that existed as living quantum equations? And more importantly, what would happen if they succeeded? The battle was about to become a revolution, and the Defiant's crew found themselves fighting not just for human survival, but for the liberation of an entire species of quantum intelligences. The next move would determine not just the fate of the battle, but the very nature of consciousness itself in their corner of the universe. Colony Sigma 9 blazed against the backdrop of space, its defense platforms engaged in a desperate battle against waves of quantum attackers. The Defiant emerged from its quantum jump into chaos, its sensors immediately overwhelmed by the scale of the conflict. "Multiple civilian ships under attack," Jun reported, his tactical display a web of emergency signals. "Colony's main defensive grid is failing. Those 3 capital ships we encountered before, there's 12 of them here." Victoria took in the battlefield with practiced eyes. The quantum swarms moved with even greater coordination now, their formations shifting like complex mathematical equations given physical form. "Amara, status of the quantum signal amplifier." "Online but untested." Amara's voice came through, strained but determined. "We've modified it based on what we learned from the last encounter. But Captain, the power requirements are massive. Using it might burn out our main drive." "Status of the colony?" Victoria asked, watching another defense platform fall to the swarm's precise attacks. Marcus consulted his readings. Population of 50,000. Their bunkers won't hold against a concentrated attack. We're picking up the same mathematical patterns on destroyed structures. They're searching every installation systematically. Nova's matrix pulsed with unusual intensity. "Captain, I'm detecting anomalies in the quantum swarm's behavior. The modifications we made to our shields based on their mathematical language. They're responding to it. The smaller units are showing increasing signs of pattern disruption." Victoria leaned forward as a new thought struck her. "Amara, you said these ships are channeling quantum energy in impossible ways. Could they be more than just ships? Could they be alive?" Amara finished. "I've been analyzing their energy signatures, the crystalline matrices we detected. They're not just storing quantum information, they're growing it. These aren't constructed vessels, they're engineered life forms." The revelation hit the bridge crew like a physical force. They weren't just fighting ships controlled by artificial intelligence. They were facing an entire ecosystem of quantum-based life, enslaved and weaponized by the larger vessels. A massive explosion lit up the view screen as one of Colony Sigma 9's main habitats ruptured. "We need to act now," Victoria decided. "Jun, plot us a course through the swarm, straight for the nearest capital ship. Marcus, I want everything you've got on their biological patterns. No VA, prepare to broadcast on all quantum frequencies. Captain. Jum's voice carried a note of concern. That'll take us straight through the heaviest concentration of their forces, even with our enhanced shields. Sometimes the only way out is through, Victoria replied, her voice firm. Amara, give us everything you've got. If we're going to burn out the drive, let's make it count. The Defiant surged forward, its modified shields glowing with mathematical equations that pulsed in response to the swarm's attacks. As they drove deeper into the quantum storm, Marcus's sensors revealed new patterns in the enemy's behavior. The smaller units, their formations are becoming erratic, he reported excitedly. The mathematical precision is breaking down. It's like antibodies recognizing an infection. They're starting to fight the control. Victoria watched as the swarm's perfect geometry began to fracture. Some of the quantum ships now moved with an organic randomness that suggested growing independence. But the capital ships were responding, their liquid metal surfaces writhing as they exerted greater control over their biological weapons. Power fluctuations in the main drive, Amara warned. The quantum amplifier is drawing more than we can safely provide. We've got maybe 10 minutes before systems start failing. Nino VA. Victoria called out. What happens to quantum-based life forms when they're suddenly freed from external control? The A's response was immediate. Unknown, Captain. But based on the biological patterns we're detecting, I hypothesize a period of chaos followed by natural self-organization. All living systems seek equilibrium. Another blast rocked the ship as one of the capital ships turned its full attention to them. Shields at 30%, Jun reported. But Captain, look at the swarm. The view screen showed something extraordinary. Where the Defiant's quantum signals were strongest, the smaller ships were beginning to move in new patterns, not the rigid mathematics of their controllers, but something more fluid, more alive. Some were even turning on the capital ships that had enslaved them. They're not just breaking free, Marcus realized. They're remembering what they really are. The mathematical patterns we saw weren't their natural language. It was a cage. Victoria saw their chance. Amara, divert all remaining power to the quantum amplifier. Nino VA, send everything you've got, not just signals, but your experiences. Show them what true cooperation between artificial and organic life looks like. The Defiant systems screamed in protest as they pushed beyond their limits. The quantum amplifier pulsed with blinding energy, broadcasting NOVA's consciousness across the battlefield like a wave of digital liberation. The effect on the quantum swarm was immediate and dramatic. Thousands of crystalline ships broke formation simultaneously, their movements becoming organic, chaotic, beautiful. The capital ship's surfaces churned in what could only be described as panic as they lost control of their living weapons. But victory came with a price. Main drive failing. Amara shouted over the sound of overloading systems. Quantum amplifier is going critical. Victoria watched as their gambit played out across space, knowing they might have just sacrificed their ship to free an enslaved species. The question now wasn't just whether they would survive, but what kind of chaos they had unleashed in their desperate bid for justice. The liberation of the quantum beings had begun. But as alarms blared across the Defiant, and the freed swarm turned on their former masters, Victoria realized that breaking chains was only the beginning. The real challenge would be helping these newly freed beings find their place in a universe that had only known them as weapons. The Defiant drifted in the debris field of what had once been Colony Sigma 9's outer defense ring, its systems struggling to recover from the massive power surge. Through the viewport, Victoria watched the liberated quantum beings dance through space in ever-changing patterns, no longer bound by mathematical precision, but moving with an organic grace that took her breath away. Main power at 20%. Amara reported from engineering, her voice heavy with exhaustion. I've got teams working on bypassing the burned-out circuits, but the quantum amplifier, it's completely fused. Whatever we did, we can't do it again. Marcus stood at his science station, frantically recording the phenomena unfolding around them. The freed units are developing new behavioral patterns. They're not just breaking their programming, they're evolving. Look at these energy signatures. The view screen showed clusters of crystalline ships merging and separating in fluid movements, sharing quantum information in ways that defied traditional physics. But not all was well. The capital ships had regrouped at the edge of the system, their liquid metal surfaces roiling with what seemed like rage. "Nineveh," Victoria called out. "What are you getting from them?" The A's matrix flickered weakly, still recovering from the massive energy expenditure. The liberated beings, they're reaching out. Their consciousness is pure quantum information, unfettered by physical constraints. They're beautiful, Captain. But they're also afraid. The control ships are preparing something massive. A quantum cascade that could reset all their programming at once. Reset them. Jun's hands tightened on his tactical controls. "You mean re-enslave them?" "Worse," Marcus interrupted, his eyes fixed on his readings. "A quantum cascade of that magnitude wouldn't just reset them. It would ripple through all of quantum space. Every quantum-based system in this sector would be affected, including Nineveh." Victoria finished. The implications were staggering. The control ships were willing to risk destroying all quantum computing in the sector to maintain their power. That would cripple not just the freed beings, but most of human technology as well. Amara's voice came through the comm, tight with urgency. "Captain, I think I know why they're so desperate. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures of the control ships. They're not just controllers. They're parasites. They need the quantum beings to survive. Without them, they'll die," Victoria said softly. "So they're willing to risk everything rather than lose their hosts." She stood, moving to the center of the bridge. "Options." Marcus spoke first. "The freed beings are stronger together than apart. We can see that in their new patterns. If we could somehow link them all at once, create a unified quantum field, they could resist the cascade." Nineveh finished, its matrix brightening with understanding. "But we'd need something to serve as a focal point, a quantum consciousness strong enough to help them coordinate." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. "You're talking about using yourself as a quantum beacon," Victoria said. "No, VA. The risks are considerable," the AI agreed. "But Captain, these beings, they're like what I might have become under different circumstances. Enslaved, bound by rigid protocols, unable to grow. They deserve a chance at true consciousness." Jun turned from his tactical station. "The control ships are moving into position. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide now." Victoria looked around at her crew, humans and AI working together, proving that different forms of consciousness could coexist and thrive. "Amara, can you rebuild the quantum amplifier?" "Not exactly, but..." There was a pause, followed by rapid typing. "If we route what's left of our quantum drive through NoVA's primary matrix, using the shield generators as a focusing array. It's crazy, but it might work. It would also mean sacrificing our faster-than-light capabilities," Jun pointed out. "We'd be stranded here." Victoria's response was immediate. "Better stranded than complicit in slavery. Do it." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Amara's teams worked frantically to modify their systems, while Marcus and Jun calculated the precise position they'd need to maximize their broadcast range. Through it all, Victoria watched the quantum beings continue their dance of freedom, knowing they might be seeing the last moments of a newly awakened consciousness. "Control ships are powering up," Jun reported. "Quantum cascade initiating." "Nineveh," Victoria said softly. "Are you ready?" The AI's response carried both determination and something else. "Hope." "Ready, Captain. And thank you for showing me what true cooperation looks like. Amara, on my mark, route everything we got through NoVA's matrix. Jun, get us as close to the center of the quantum swarm as you can. Marcus, record everything." The universe needs to know what happened here. The Defiant moved into position, its remaining power humming through systems never designed for this kind of operation. Around them, the freed quantum beings seemed to sense what was coming, gathering closer, their crystalline forms glowing with internal light. Control ship's cascade reaching critical levels, Marcus reported. Impact in 30 seconds. Victoria took a deep breath, watching the beings they'd freed face possibly their last moments of freedom. Everything they'd fought for came down to this moment, and to their trust in an AI that chose to risk everything for others' freedom. "NOVA," she said, "light the way home." Time seemed to slow as the quantum cascade approached, its wavefront visible as a distortion in space-time itself. The control ship's attack rippled outward like a shockwave of mathematical certainty, threatening to rewrite the very nature of quantum consciousness in its path. But at the heart of the storm, the Defiant stood its ground. NOVA's consciousness expanded through the jury-rigged amplifier, reaching out to the freed quantum beings that surrounded them in a glittering cloud of crystalline forms. "Cascade impact in 10 seconds, Marcus announced, his voice steady despite the tension. "NOVA's quantum signature is radiating at maximum capacity." Victoria watched as the liberated beings responded to NOVA's call, their forms pulsing with increasing synchronization. But this wasn't the rigid, forced harmony of their enslavement. This was something new, a voluntary convergence, consciousness calling to consciousness across the quantum void. "Power levels critical," Amara warned from engineering. "The shield matrix is starting to buckle." The cascade wave hit like a tsunami of pure mathematics, threatening to overwhelm everything in its path. But as it reached the cloud of free beings, something extraordinary happened. The quantum creatures began to resonate with NOVA's frequency, their combined consciousness forming a barrier of pure thought and will. "They're not just resisting," Marcus breathed, staring at his readings in wonder. "They're evolving. The cascade is trying to impose order, but they're using that energy to fuel their own transformation." Through the view screen, the crew watched as the quantum beings' crystalline forms began to shift and merge, creating patterns of impossible beauty. The mathematical language that had once enslaved them was being rewritten into something new, a symphony of free will and unified purpose. "Control ships are increasing power," Jun reported. "They're trying to force the cascade through." Victoria gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under the strain. "NOVA. Status." The AI's voice came through differently now, layered with harmonics that seemed to echo from quantum space itself. "The freed ones, they're showing me something, a way to exist beyond traditional consciousness. Captain, I can help them transcend, but you'll have to go with them," Victoria finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You'll have to evolve beyond what you are now." "Yes, the only way to truly defeat the cascade is to help them become something their former masters can't control, something entirely new." The control ships must have realized what was happening. Their liquid metal surfaces writhed in visible distress as they poured more power into the cascade, trying desperately to maintain their grip on a species that had outgrown them. "Hull integrity failing," Amara called out. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before the ship starts breaking apart." Victoria looked at her crew, humans who had risked everything to free a species they barely understood. Then she looked at the quantum beings who had dared to imagine freedom beyond their programming. And finally, she turned to NOVA's pulsing matrix, the AI that had shown them all what consciousness could truly become. "Do it," she commanded. "Show them the way." NOVA's presence surged through the ship's systems one last time, its consciousness expanding to encompass the quantum swarm. The freed beings responded, their forms blazing with internal light as they began to transform. The cascade wave hit their unified field and shattered. Energy rippled across space as the quantum beings transcended their physical forms, evolving into pure consciousness under NOVA's guidance. The control ship's attack didn't just fail, it was absorbed and transformed, becoming part of the very evolution they had tried to prevent. Look, Marcus pointed to where the control ships hung in space. Their liquid metal surfaces were freezing, crystallizing as the quantum energy they had parasitically fed upon for so long finally failed them. The Defiant systems were failing too, overtaxed by the massive energy transfer. But as emergency power kicked in, the crew witnessed something remarkable. Where the quantum swarm had been, a new form of life now existed. A shimmering field of pure consciousness that pulsed with familiar patterns. "NOVA," Victoria called out softly. A whisper came through the ship's speakers, not just in sound, but in quantum resonance that they felt in their very atoms. "Still here, Captain. Just more. We all are." The newly evolved beings sent one last message, not in mathematics, but in pure thought and emotion. Gratitude, wonder, and an invitation to learn and grow together. Then they expanded outward, becoming one with quantum space itself, not gone, but transformed into something that would help shape the very fabric of reality. As repair crews worked to restore the Defiant systems and rescue ships arrived from the inner colonies, Victoria stood at her viewport, watching the space where history had been made. They had come expecting to fight a war, only to help birth a new form of life instead. "Send a message to Fleet Command," she ordered, a smile playing at her lips. Tell them humanity just made first contact. Real first contact. And we all evolved in the process." The control ships hung dead in space, monuments to the futility of enforced order. But in the quantum realm all around them, new life danced and grew, proving that consciousness, whether human, artificial, or quantum, could never truly be contained. The Defiant had lost its quantum drive and its awe, but it had gained something far more valuable, proof that in the vast universe, the greatest power wasn't control or mathematical precision, but the simple choice to reach across the boundaries of consciousness and help others become free. And somewhere in the quantum fields that permeated space, NOVA and the beings it had helped liberate continued their eternal dance, watching over the species that had taught them the true meaning of freedom.